Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Welcome back to Noor Ishq, the path to surrender, a sacred sanctuary for the heart where fear dissolves, faith takes root, and the soul aligns fully with divine trust. Let's start our next chapter. Letting the ego fall silent. As trust begins to settle in the heart, another layer slowly reveals itself. Even after awareness, even after discipline, even after trust, something still remains. A quiet center that continues to say, I want, I feel, I deserve, I know. This is the ego, not in its loud, obvious form, but in its most refined and subtle expressions. In earlier stages, the ego appears clearly. It shows itself in pride, anger, comparison, and the need to be seen. But now it becomes quieter, more hidden. It no longer demands attention loudly, it simply remains at the center. Even in spiritual practice, the ego can still exist. I am progressing. I am becoming more aware. I am closer now. These thoughts may seem harmless, but they carry a subtle weight. They keep the self at the center of the journey, and as long as the self remains the center, true surrender cannot fully unfold because surrender begins when the center shifts from I to he. Letting the ego fall silent does not mean destroying the self, it means softening its dominance. The ego is not removed in a single moment, it fades gradually, like a voice that becomes quieter over time. At this stage, the seeker begins to notice something deeply subtle. Even their spiritual efforts carry a sense of self, the desire to improve, the desire to reach a state, the desire to feel closer. All of these at their root still contain I. And this realization can feel uncomfortable because the seeker begins to see that even this their sincerity is not completely free from self. But this is not failure, this is unveiling. And unveiling is mercy because only what is seen can be released. The process of letting the ego fall silent is not harsh. It is not about rejecting yourself. It is about gently stepping back from the need to be the center. Instead of saying, I am doing this, the heart begins to feel, I am being guided. Instead of saying, I have reached something, the heart feels, I am being carried. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything because when the sense of I softens, a deeper peace begins to appear. The constant need to evaluate oneself decreases. The pressure to progress reduces. The need to measure spiritual states fades. The heart becomes lighter because it is no longer holding itself as the center of the journey. Another sign that the ego is becoming quieter is the reduction of inner resistance. Before, the heart may resist what it does not like. It may question, why is this happening to me? Why is this not going my way? But as surrender deepens, resistance softens. The heart begins to accept more easily, not out of weakness, but out of trust. It understands that not everything needs to align with its preferences because there is a wisdom beyond its understanding. Letting the ego fall silent as also changes how the seeker see others. The need to compare decreases, the need to judge decreases. The heart becomes more spacious. It begins to see others with compassion instead of evaluation because it no longer needs to define itself through comparison. The ego thrives on separation. I am better, I am worse, I am different. But when the ego softens, these boundaries begin to dissolve. The heart begins to feel a quiet connection with others, not based on identity, but based on shared humanity, and deeper than that, based on being servants of the same Creator. It is openness, it allows the heart to receive. There is another delicate aspect of this stage, silence. Not only external silence, but internal silence. The inner dialogue begins to quiet down. The constant commentary, the need to interpret everything, the habit of labeling every experience. All of this begins to reduce. And in that quiet, something beautiful appears, space. A space where the heart is no longer filled with itself, a space where presence can deepen, a space where the awareness of Allah can settle more fully. This silence is not emptiness, it is openness. It allows the heart to receive, to feel, to rest. At this stage, love transforms again. Earlier, love was longing, then it became trust. Now it begins to become surrender. The heart begins to say, I do not need to hold on so tightly anymore. I do not need to control everything. I do not need to define myself. I simply belong to you. This belonging brings a deep sense of peace because the heart no longer feels separate. It no longer feels that it must carry itself alone. It rests in the awareness that it is part rooted in divine presence. Letting the ego fall silent does not make the seeker disappear. It makes them real because what remains is no longer driven by ego. It is guided by sincerity, by humility, by quiet awareness. And this prepares the heart for one of the most profound understandings of the path, the meaning of Rida. Thank you for listening. Until we meet again in the next chapter, may the light of these words illuminate your next steps, guiding you effortlessly from presence into the deeper divine trust.